everyone and welcome. Good to be here. Good to have you all here on this supposedly thundery but not yet Sunday evening. Can't believe we've come around to the second Sunday in May already. I know about you, but April just disappeared for me and I've no idea what I was even doing. So, well, sorry, chair hitting table. So, welcome to everybody who I've already said hi to in chat and to the people who've just turned up. Digger. Tamsin saying she heard a mic tap. That'll be me turning it off mute. And then Adam as well. So, welcome everybody. I do need to start off by thanking my moderators. I've seen Digger and Timber in chat. Norm, it's Mothering Sunday in the US, so he might have been on call for Mothering Sunday duties. Now, if you're in the UK, we had it 2 months ago, but the Americans do it in May. For some reason, they're different. And like, we never had Father's Day when I was a kid either. But thanks to the moderators, you guys are very well behaved, and I don't think they have to kick you out that often. But sometimes we do get those annoying adult chatbots in here. So Digger's saying he just had a massive thunderstorm, lots of lightning and rain. We know it's still blue skies here with the odd scudding clouds, so maybe we're going to miss them. There was a bit of grey in the distance. So Tim says he can hear me, but he can't see me. He's just stuck on 30 seconds. Is it just him? And Timber and Digger say, yep, it's just him. So if you ever do have problems, then just, I guess, turn off, turn on, something like that. I've got a couple of notices right at the top. Well, not right at the top, but fairly near the top. There's a Kickstarter link to Soul Survivor by Second Dynasty. I need to put the ship up this week that I've not really painted, but I primed for them, printed and primed. It's their latest Kickstarter, and I've done a lot of Second Dynasty stuff in the past. Really, Ben supported me so much in choosing what I'm doing now and in helping me get started in Kickstarter and in giving me loads of great advice. And I wouldn't be here doing this now if it wasn't for him. So thanks to Ben and the rest of the people there who actually came across from Second Dynasty. So Tamsin, I think we met through Second Dynasty first. I've had a lot of great people come across and support me as well because of kind of Discord and stuff like that with them. So I've put his Kickstarter in chat. I've pinned my next Kickstarter up there. I don't actually know. I probably could check. Let me see. At the moment, I have, wait for it, folks. I have 33 followers on my next Kickstarter. I would love it if that was a little higher. I'll be honest, my first two Kickstarters got about 150, 140 backers. My last one only got about 100. So I really hope this one does a bit better. I'm not sure about timing and how things go through the year yet. But I'm also trying to scale down how much I do, because I think last time I had so much I couldn't even show a quarter of what I did as models, which seemed a bit daft. So anyway, my link to my preload page, it's not going live till June. When in June, still to be debated, because I want to go and visit a friend, so I need to just sort my weekends out. But that link should be pinned in chat so you can see it. And really appreciate any backers. And Digger's just put it up again. So there we go. So Digger says his is about 4 hours later than predicted. I'm guessing he means his thunderstorm. And Tim's managed to get his YouTube going, but he had to watch the adverts again. They want their money. They keep reminding me on this to put in adverts. I'm like, what? You just all wait whilst, or I carry on talking and you all have adverts? It just seems weird. So I never put them in the middle. Oh, but Tamsin was a subscriber before we met on Second Dynasty. Thanks, Tamsin. I do appreciate it. It's always good to meet people who've been subscribing me for a while. It kind of makes me feel like I must be doing something right. So, I was struggling, I'm going to be honest. I was struggling what to do it about. I've done a lot of scenery live streams in the past, and I didn't want to necessarily rehash old ground. And I was just looking around my room here. You can see models and inspiration over here. And I thought, I've done a few things of, specifically the diorama that's just there that you can't actually see because this is in the way. I've done a few models that are not painting. So I'm going to talk about not painting. It's going to be weird. We'll get there in a minute. And I'll explain a little bit more of that later on. But I have to say, I can talk for 2 hours, but I feel like I could do with some meaningful topics to talk about. So if anybody has anything they want me to talk about in live streams, just drop me a chat, a line, a DM, whatever on Instagram or whatever, and let me know. Because I'm happy to talk about things. I think at the end of this Kickstarter, which should finish in June, early July, I probably will take a month, well not a month, but I'll probably take a few weeks off. Because when I even take a week or two off, I never get any modelling done because I just get on with other stuff. And I need to finish tidying up my house, finish off the projects I'm in the middle of. I had a whole Bad Batch series planned to go live with the Bad Batch. That finished last week, the series, and I haven't even got one of them out. Well, I've got the painting of the Bad Batch figures out, but not actually anything to do with that. And since then, I've picked up Bad Batch Shatterpoint figures and hopefully Bad Batch Legion figures, I think. So, you know, I'm a bit behind. In fact, my last video that went live when I went in to set this one up was the last live stream, which means I haven't done any videos this month. So I need to change that around a bit. But my focus has to be on what earns me money. And sadly, that is my Kickstarters rather than real modelling. And I've picked up I'm not going to call it a guilty secret, but I've picked up a habit now of, I'm trying not to work in the evenings this year because you'll have heard me talk about this a lot in the past. I was literally working from first thing in the morning till last thing at night with no breaks and all weekend. So I'm trying to be better. So now I'm just reading instead, which doesn't get half as much modelling done. So there we go. I'm quite an addictive reader as well. Don't get as much sleep either. But we are going to talk about modelling next. So that's enough blather. So who have we got in chat? So Polite's apologising to Digger that he didn't comment on the last few videos. He'll do it as soon as possible. I always try and comment back to people unless they've commented on my appearance in some way, in which case that's not where I put my video up to talk about modelling, not about what my hair looks like, or whether I have nice hands, or it's an advert, or I just don't understand what they've said and I feel really stupid. But there we go. Hi, Erinville. Nice to have you along. And then Stating the Obvious has rolled up. Stating it is 9 minutes past. You may even have put this on a bit that. You know, we were one of the early ones, but to be honest, folks, and especially if you're watching this on repeat later, don't worry, I understand real life gets in the way. It's been a lovely day today in the UK. It's been sunny, for me at least, and it's been gorgeous weather. So I understand if other things have got there. So Erin's asking, Digger and Timber, are they going to Getz and IPMS? I'm not sure whether I'll go to IPMS. That's a lot later in the year, so I have a bit of time to decide. But yeah. But let's just see. C and L John, or C and EI John, afternoon from Eastern Middle Tennessee. Well, welcome aboard. And then John A. Dawson, hi, welcome. And yeah, they're just organising themselves, meeting up on Getz. I'm going to leave Timber, Digger and Erin to chat about that. So, what are we talking about this week? First of all, a quick update on what I'm actually working on all the time. And that is my designs. I've now got 4 pod races done. And they're all just sat down here, you know. And for those of you who don't know, this is a pod racer. This is Morhonic. He's like the bull-looking one, and he's, you know, this is the smallest one I've done. I've also got somewhere I've got Anakin. Oh no, Anakin's a long way off, and Sebulba and Beg Quadranaris were the first 4 I've done. So I've got 2 more to do. But what I've also been doing, which we looked at last time, was 3D modelling the figures. And for those of you that were on last time, this is the figure that I was doing. Let's see if it will even, no, wrong way around. There we go. It's model. I always, it's very high tech, isn't it? I always model in print and clear, but then they don't really show up. And I've also done, all of them actually that are now there, but they're not all cleaned and printed. But I've also got Little Annie. As you can see, Little Annie is a real little boy. And they're a little fine, if I'm honest. I need to get better at chunking them up. I might go back before they come out and chunk up these bits. We're just a little too thin perhaps. And on, I need to see how Sebulba is, but on Mohonic, he's got these little, and they're way fine. They're like far too thin. So I will need to do some work on those, I think, before they go out. So they're either sat on the printer, and I'm also now starting to sort out printing bases and stuff, and I've started on Mohonic because he's the smallest in resin, because I suspect a lot of people want to print these in resin, but I haven't supported in resin for ages, so my last time I supported it didn't work, so I'm back to just trying now with these. I've got a base printing, and to show you how you can go down a rabbit hole with 3D printing, I started doing the Rocky base on Thursday, Friday perhaps, because I wanted to do a Rocky base to resin print, and I put everything else to print on the Mohonic sled, and I couldn't get it to go. It was manifold, but I couldn't, and I can get it manifold, but I couldn't get it to go through the software I do that makes it a skin, which means if you want to hollow it for resin, you've got loads of boulders and stuff that need extra holes, and then I can never get Chitterbox to do holes properly. So I redid it, and I redid it, and that was Friday, and I redid it, and I redid it, and that was Saturday, and at the end of Saturday, I left something loading up onto the cloud to check that it would go, do this little reskinning thing. And yeah, it worked Saturday night. So Sunday, I've spent all day putting those into their same supports on all of them so that they'll print. 3 days. And it took me like 2 hours to model a base and 3 days, really, to get it printable. That is just so bad. And that was a learning point for how I'd modelled it. I got too many stones on, and it was just causing too many issues, and too many of them were too small. But anyway, it's done now, thankfully, and hopefully printing both in FDM and resin as we speak. So there we go. Who else have we got in chat? So Aaronville's going to be at Getz, and he'll be wearing his sweatshirt and cap if you want to see him. If you don't know what Getz is, it's the Great Electric Train Show, so you can Google that probably with that. Raymondson, I have problems with the live stream, may need to restart the PC. You're not the only person this evening, so maybe YouTube's just being a bit dicky. Hi Tom! Tom's obviously, he's got the little Kathy Millett badge, so he's one of my channel member supporters. I still have people who support my YouTube channel member, and I do apologise to them, they don't get as many videos as they used to, but I've still got some stuff to edit up. I get a bit like, I've got these deadlines and I'm a week behind, so whilst I'm not hitting my deadlines, nothing else really gets done. And Ravenson is definitely having problems because he's tried restarting 3 times and his video's frozen after some seconds. Adam says, we need a mini Cathy and a pod racer. I just cannot be bothered to put myself into them. I'm sorry, I really am. In fact, some of the videos I've got, we're putting them on in a minute. They actually had the mini Cathys again and I took them off. Sorry. Okay, so Robertson says, I can't say anything important for the next few minutes because he's restarting. So I'm just going to blather a bit more about, something. And then Tim says that it reminds people you can actually buy a mini me. I got myself scanned at the NEC many years ago. And when I was a judge on the Great Model Railway Challenge, they used that scan. They scanned all the judges and the presenters, but they used my scan from the NEC. So you can have me in any size you want that Model U will print. And it's Model U 3D, I think, is the company. So I'm there still. Tim, as he says, put me on Port de Norwich. I'm actually at the back, which is quite a cute cameo. And I gave some dioramas to Adam. We met in a car park at the NEC, not the NEC car park because that's too expensive, but the short stay international one. And he's got 3 dioramas, and so he's going to put me on there. Aaron's finally back on his iPad. It's amazing. It's always useful to have multiple ways of getting things, isn't there? Hi, Russ's rocking O and HO trains and stuff. Welcome. So John, question for Kathy. Should I prime hydrocal casting rules first before painting, or paint first and then add washes afterwards? It depends on the effect you're going after. I always paint my first coat with a dilute acrylic, which soaks in quite a bit, and that's your base coat. If you make it too thin or too thick, it doesn't work. And what happens is you can get areas of denser colour where it builds up when you put the brush on, and when you put another brush stroke over it, you can get double the paint in some places and not as much in others, and it can look really blotchy. For some people, so people may prime it, but I only ever prime it with water-based paints, and I'll do a basic brick or stone colour. Some people will spray paint with a spray can, and you can do that, and then it's just painting like normal. But if you're doing rocks and things like that, quite often you want the blotchiness, and so you actually probably want to paint them with quite thin washes. But your washes will sink in differently if the hydrocal is porous still, because it hasn't absorbed enough paint to seal it, versus if it's not. And what I find with hydrocal is sometimes it's less porous in some places, depending how it was whipped up for pouring and then poured in. And sometimes you'll get streaks which don't take the paint evenly, at which point you need to go to a thicker paint mixture just to cover that and make it even. Tim, he had the same problem. In the end, he switched from Firefox to Chrome, and then it was okay. So I'm on Chrome for live streaming because it's YouTube, and Google likes YouTube to be on Chrome. So there we go. And then Lee, I remember the episode where they scanned everyone. Yes, I remember spending a lot of time talking to Model U that day when they came. I'm missing quite a lot in the actual train room because it was the last day but one, and I tended to let them get on with it because they were so stressed. But there we go, spent a lot of time chatting to him. Very fascinating. So I'm going to put the video on in the background and talk about it and make myself just a little bit smaller. I don't think I need to be that big. Maybe I'll even go over here because we've got other stuff in there. So what I'm going to talk about today is no paint modelling. Now, what do I mean by no paint modelling? Well, this is the first time I'd ever done no paint modelling. And in this, yes, there's paint on the diorama. I'm not saying there isn't. And there's types of paint on the models. But these are self-coloured sci-fi kits by Takara Tomy. And they came with the decals for Optimus on them. And you can see he's got these flame decals on his shoulders and on his bottoms. And it came with the black marks that go on for Bumblebee. So I'm looking at them going, I don't want to paint these, but they look like plastic. They just look like plastic. So in the end, I spray painted them with dull coat, which is a clear matte varnish, and then weathered them up a bit, and then did a sort of satin or maybe a gloss looking at this over the top, because they're actually quite shiny in this show. I think they're a bit too glossy, and I'd probably have done it with a satin nowadays. So what I want to talk about is how you do no paint modelling, because I find a lot of people get very scared by painting, especially if it's a model like this. It's a sci-fi model, or they've got an engine already that's ready done for their model railway, model railroad. They don't want to have to paint anything, but they're a little scared about what to do next. So I'm going to talk through what you do if you want a nice realistic finish, but you don't actually want to paint your models. Now, first caveat, obviously, this only really works if you have self-coloured plastic models. So if you've come from tabletop games where, little misunderstanding on my part side here, I cannot physically understand why people use all of the diorama materials that are out there that are coloured and then paint everything black and then repaint it in paint. I've never got my head around why they do it. And they do amazing results, but painting static grass, I mean, you're trying to paint it and then you get the ground with the same green airbrush. I just struggle to get my head around why anybody would do that. And yet loads of people do. Night Shift does it and he gets amazing results. So I'm always really surprised by people who put static grass down and then paint it. So we'll talk about more of that in a bit, in quite a long bit actually. But the given is, if you want to do no paint models, you have to start with painted self-coloured plastic models or with products that are already coloured, like static grass, stone, tile grout. So that in some ways you're using existing products that already have the colour that you want. So this isn't going to work for grey plastic model kits. It's just not going to work. So there's definitely a piece here where this is quite specific to certain types of modelling. It doesn't work for 3D printing necessarily, but it does work for things like my Optimus and Bumblebee, and for this. Gosh, wasn't my hair dark back then? And this is just basically the Master Chief from Halo. This is one of my earlier models. I've ended a whole diorama and he's sat over there on a tree at the moment. And this is what he looks like. He's weathered, but he's more or less in the right colours for these. I've had these for ages. I think they're 6-scale Master Chief Bandai kits, sprue kits, Bandai. And I've got about 8 or 10 of them because they were dirt cheap at one point, and now they're probably hundreds of pounds. And you can see they look really cool. They're self-coloured, really simple, but they look like plastic. So this is me back in the day talking about how you convert something that looks plasticky into looking real. I'm going to go and look at chat for a bit whilst this goes. John, thanks Kathy for answering your question. Not a problem. I'm always here to answer questions. Actually, it makes it more fun because otherwise it's just me talking about something I put up to watch. So there we go. They're still sorting out Chrome, seems to be doing better. Right, still talking computers. John is trying to get his Mojo back for working on his ON30 layout. I am actually struggling with time to get my Mojo back to do modelling. And so that's why you're not seeing any videos, because all my modelling is on a computer at the moment. It's not on a, kind of real life, which is what my YouTube videos are. So Ereville is saying he scanned himself in 4 different positions at Ali Pali at Model U. Alan, in my Ereville sweater, 2 standing with and without bag, and sitting with a drink, and 1 leaning on a fence. Sounds fun. Sounds really fun. So Ereville also says, I bought myself an airbrush Iwata but scared to use it. I don't have the skills. I think with airbrushing, a lot of it's practice rather than skills. I mean, it is skills, but they're built up through practice. So just start and do single colour paints to start with. You know, I need to paint this. I'm just going to paint a base coat in a certain colour and then hand paint any details and work your way up from there. I spray lacquers, Mr. Hobby, and they spray beautifully. I've always struggled with acrylics. So I'm not really the person to ask unless you're willing to have a full kind of mask and setup and external venting and everything. But definitely just do it. And actually that's what Ravenson says. Don't be scared, you'll learn by doing. Maybe watch some of the airbrushing videos from Boomer Dioramas to see the basics. Yep. There are some great videos out there on just starting airbrushing, and it's what I did. And then I went on a course run by Mick Bonwick, sadly passed on now, at Missenden Abbey, and he was brilliant, and I learnt a lot from him as well. So one of the things, if you are going to do a no paint model, you may still need to actually paint some of the highlights and details by hand. So this was a green self-coloured plastic, but there were a couple of bits on the Master Chief that were still not quite the right colour. But the key steps that I do when I'm looking at doing something without painting it specifically, without starting off with that airbrush and just going, is I'm really just adding the weathering stages. So if you've done all weathering videos, basically it's that, but without painting the original model. So in this instance, there's a lot of panel lining, and then we'll get to weathering in the second video that I did. And what I'm really trying to do is to get everything looking more realistic and put depth in. Paint has a different opacity to plastic. Plastic has a slight look to it that looks plasticky. And most things in real life are actually either painted, or even if they're self-coloured plastic, they have more weight because they're bigger. They seem to reflect light differently. So what we're looking at doing here is just making sure that the depth is brought out, and panel lining is using an enamel wash to bring it out. But it's really simple. You just plaster it on, then take it off when it's more or less set, because it's enamel. You can do it with oils as well, but you take it off with white spirit on a cotton bud, And so you can really very easily add depth to what's a plain plastic model, very simply. But you know, you're looking at it going, well, that's right, Kathy, but I don't have a Master Chief model in green. Half of what I paint for my Star Wars, or I've been using in my Star Wars dioramas for ships, are all toys. And toys always come pre-painted. So if you have, if you're doing sci-fi, you can definitely take toys and convert them. You know, there's Millennium Falcons coming out your wazoo out there, maybe not in the right scale, but for Legion, which is what I'm playing, I'm in a tournament at the end of the month. Yeah. Yeah, I am in a tournament at the end of the month, and I haven't played since January. And so I need to glue all my men back on by Tuesday because I'm playing my first game since then. But anyway, I'm doing them the terrain for it. I'm doing 3 or 4 tables, so I need to go in on Tuesday anyway and chat to them about that. But a lot of what I've used for Star Wars Legion have been Mission Fleet, and they're about the right size. So you can find toys quite often that fit what you want. And if you see, people out there will quite often respray them grey and then paint them again. But actually, I sometimes think you don't need to. You can take the toy and tone it down by doing these techniques, by adding panel lines, by adding weathering over the top. And by the time you've done all that, you've generally toned it down. This is adding in sort of slimes and greens to add depth. So I haven't painted the base colour, but what I have done is gone over it with a similar colour. Much easier to do with oils, and that's probably what I'd use nowadays, rather than enamel washes, which I've only got in limited colours. But you can use it then to streak extra colour over the top to bring a bit of richness to the plastic, like you see I'm doing here. And all it does is add a bit more variety of colour. But again, you've not had to get your airbrush out, you've not had to base your base colours, you've literally just weathered. Right, let's see. Raymondson, I've also not started with airbrushing. My problem is that I don't have a compressor at the moment. I spent most of my money on re-airing my car, or repairing. I thought maybe that was your putting more fluid in your aircon. Mark, it's my pet hate for things to look plasticky. I've just spent this weekend turning silver painted plastic, supposedly metal, to look like metal. No repainting, just oil wash. It's exactly that technique, because you know, you can make anything that's plastic look good, especially props. Now, this is something that most of you probably don't do, but if you do cosplay props, you can quite often buy the prop that you want, but it's in that bright, especially if it's silver, plastic, and it looks wrong. You don't need to repaint it, especially if it's more or less the right colours already. You can just go through all these weathering stages. Here I'm using a silver paint over the, I think it's a Tamiya, looking by the tackiness of it, just to add scratches. I'd probably use a Molotow chrome pen now to do this, which is even easier to do scratches with. But you can see the Master Chief's well done, and this is basically what it looks like when it's done. So that's a little sneak peek, and we'll be on to the next video soon. Russes says, I've always primed my shiny plastic with automotive style primer first, cleaning the mild detergent, and the paint adheres much better. That's fine. And if I was going to paint this and repaint from scratch totally, I would literally prime with an automotive primer, or with Tamiya fine grey if I was doing a model, or with Mr. Surfacer grey through my airbrush, which is a lacquer. And what they all have in common is they're a lacquer, so they eat into the plastic slightly, which really helps. What I'm really just talking about today is when I can't be bothered to repaint everything, to go through and mask it and then reassemble it all, do it, check it all fits, take it apart, repaint it, put it back together again. When I just literally want to take what's there and just make it look like a really good model. Hi David from Costa Rica. Great to have you with us. So now we're on to the heavier weathering. Now the Master Chief, I don't know if you've seen the Halo TV series. I've watched it. It's nothing like Halo the game. The characters are nothing like Halo the game. They often look like Halo the game, but they don't actually act like Halo the game at all. But I've quite enjoyed the series regardless. His never looks as muddy as this. He obviously doesn't slog through the halos quite like they do in the games, but there we go. Ravenson says the turbocharger is damaged, it needs servicing. It'd be nice to, I could buy a nice compressor for airbrushing. I need my car. I'm living in a 1-horse town. Yeah, cars are just so much more important, aren't they? And Andy T's here. Hi. Hi from to Somerset even. Don't worry about being late. You can always catch up the first earlier. And I was trying to say not too much for a while Raveson had problems with his PC. So there we go. One thing to look at here. This is very much, just a basic plastic. And I've talked about cosplay and toys and plastic models, but we'll talk about scenery in about half an hour's time or so, because actually scenery is another area where I see people paint a lot and I don't really paint my scenery. So that'll be an interesting one to see, people's views, especially on scenery. But if you want a good book for how to weather this kind of thing, this is the Master Chief, but how to weather mecha or generally this type of figure, I really recommend the Mig Jimenez ones, which are mecha, I think they're called. There's like 2 or 3 of them. And the first one, it gives you really good things like, what I'm doing here is spattering on little droplets around the bottom for the mud. But he comes up with some really great weathered effects, and they use his products, but, they're great products to use. And these are the original MIG or AK Interactive enamel washes. I think most of mine have gone off now, but I do own the full set. Andy asks, have I tried AK's panel liner range? Maybe, probably not. I already have. I like Tamiya best. The reason I use Tamiya is they come in a square bottle, so they're harder to knock over, and they come with a brush. So the brush is integral. So I've got 4 or 5 Tamiya ones, and they're my all-time favourite. What I find is every single company now does every single thing that someone else does, but the Tamiya are amongst the first. I also used to use MIG washes as panel liner most of the time. So if you saw me doing this earlier, I think I was using the MIG Dart wash as a panel liner. So I have the original MIG washes back from 10, 15, maybe longer years ago, and they're still going. I'm still using them. So because of that, I've never bought the newer ones. Why? And I think that's the moral of a lot of these things. There will always be someone bringing out a new product. If you already have a product that does it, you don't need to buy the new one unless you want to buy the new one. I like buying new paints. So there's no need to buy new paints all the time if you already have something that will do that job. And actually, also, I'd probably buy I'd probably use an oil wash as well now if I wanted different colours. So Andy's saying AKs are also square and have a brush and lid. Sounds like they ripped Tamiya off then, because Tamiya's been going way longer than AK with those. So nothing new under the sun. They've just stolen off someone else, which, AK, MIG, all of these, all they do is take what other people have done and repackage them. So you look at James Workshop came up with contrast paints, Army Painter do speed paints, Vallejo do express paints. Suddenly everybody has some kind of speed paint out there. And so you can go to your favourite range, or you can go to the range that does it first, depending whether you're an early adopter. I mean, I've had the Tamiya ones for donkey's years. They're not that cheap in this country necessarily. I used to get them at a show or something. But I would have panel lined with MIG before that. And I've definitely had those 10, 15 years. The original MIG washes, and just used a wash. Because all a panel liner is, for those of you wondering, is a wash. It's an enamel wash. The newer ones come with a brush and a square bottle, so they're easier to use, but they're nothing more exciting than a wash. An enamel wash, and what's good about them is you put them on, they go down, and if they come outside the lines at all, especially where you're putting them on, you can take it off with a bit of white spirit and cotton buds. But that's been around for decades. So if you already have enamel washes and you haven't got a lot of money, you don't need to go out and buy new panel liners. You certainly don't need to go out and buy Tamiya panel liners or anything like that. You can just carry on with your enamel or oil washes even you could use. What I'm using here are liquid pigments that I bought because they're an exciting new product, because I do actually love buying exciting new products. And they're great for spattering a chalky looking mud. But before that, I would have literally taken a pastel from an art shop, a chalk pastel, and I would have I'd have just scraped it with an X-Acto blade and used isopropyl alcohol to create a little solution and flick that on. So if you love new products, go out and buy them. If you don't, actually the techniques they're formulating products for, the techniques have normally been around 20-30 years in military modelling already, because military modelling was doing spattering with pigments 2-3 decades ago. Certainly start of this century probably. And as a result, you can probably go back and find them on forums and stuff back in the day, which is where I found all this. And if you want to buy the exciting new product, please do, because I do love exciting new products, but don't feel you have to. You can probably go back. And then people say to me, have I tried things like MIG's new dry brushing paints? They're excellent. And I'm like, no, I haven't. Partly because I don't really want to be spending a lot of money on supplies when I already have 3 or 4 cupboards worth of paint of some sort. So I'll probably just use either normally artist acrylics or Vallejo or whatever I have if I want to paint. But I won't have gone out and bought new dry brush paints because I've already got so many paints to use up and I've already got all the colours that I want. But if people love new stuff, try a dry brush paint. I think they're chalkier, they've probably got a higher pigment density or something like that. And I'm sure they do look really good and they work really well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use them. You can probably get great results with, whatever your other paints. You might just get easier results with dry brush paints. So Annie says, I must use acrylics as I have a tortoise who's hibernating in the winter and the breathing slows down. I think I remember you saying that before, Andy, yeah. The only other... I wouldn't spray noxious stuff like that. It does stink my whole house out. It's better to do it in the summer, I find, because I can open all the doors and that's really cool. This is the original Halo Infinite trailer from E3 donkey's years ago. And sadly the game wasn't much bigger than my diorama really. And then this is my diorama. And then people complained about the sci-fi looking building, so they then changed it to be more brutalistic concrete like the older versions of Halo and less like the one I did, but still. But yeah, I totally understand, Andy, that you don't want to kill them off with vapours. That's why I say I'm quite a bad person to ask about airbrushing, because a lot of mine is I've just found a product that works for me rather than I'm that great at airbrushing. So just to show that I did once upon a time do actual real modelling. This is S-scale if you're into railways, so it's 1/64. And this is a Pacific Northwest diorama effectively, but just happens to have 2 halo elements, one of which is sort of the building and the other's a little warthog with them in. So I painted this, but I haven't painted the tree sort of trees. I painted the wire and everything because I've done those in things that come in, they're scratch built. What I haven't done is painted the needles or anything like that, and I've used multicoloured sort of different grasses, but I've chosen the right colour grass for what I want. And this is how I differ to many sort of someone who's come out of tabletop gaming originally, because they would spray the whole thing black and then paint it green, whereas I will spray the bits that I want to be brown, and then I'll apply the green sort of leaves effectively. But the point of this one is to show where the line for me between painting on a diorama and scenery comes in. David, I really like watching your videos, although I don't speak English. Your videos inspire me to improve on painting, see some tips and also make more 3D printed things. Thanks for sharing knowledge. Thank you, David. Pretty soon I need to actually start doing something with my pod racers I've got here, so they'll be the next thing I'm painting. James has arrived. Hello, James. Lee, I seem to recall S-scale is similar to 28mm used for game miniatures. So it's 1/64. I don't know what 28mm is. I know that 35mm is 1/47 or 1/48. So at the moment, all of this stuff is disparate colours. So I do need to paint all of this in a diorama. So for me, and everyone does it differently, you could colour your rocks before you paint them by putting a dye in or putting paint into the plaster mix. It may change the way the plaster works, so you could pre-dye them. But actually here I want to mix them all in with sculptor mould, so there's no advantage to pre-painting them. But you know, if you want to if you want to pre-mix, I guess, a colour in, you can do that if you want to avoid painting later. So you can see at the moment it's a sea of white, so white that it's actually overpowered my camera. And I've put down a base coat over everything, and this is just raw artist's acrylic umber. And you can see it all absorbs slightly differently. And I've gone over it a bit with other colours to do my rock work, because there's no way I will get this to work as a diorama unless I paint. But I'm actually going to show you one in a minute that I do paint a little bit, but not half as much. And it does depend very much on what you're actually using. So if you're using plaster, you're going to have to paint it because it's white. But this is literally just painted and dry brushed. I do like my dry brush brushes, by the way. Ravenson, you did a very good painting job with the Master Chief. You're the queen of rotten metal. Thank you. Yeah, and I didn't paint him, I just weathered him. I didn't have to take him apart. I didn't have to spend ages putting on a primer, 2 coats of base coat, maybe 1 coat of base coat, depending how well it lays down, depending on the difference between the colour of my primer is and that, and then a varnish over the top. I didn't have to do that. What I probably would have done at the end, I don't think I did on that one, but what I would have done if it was for actual tabletop gaming or something, used where I'm going to handle it rather than a diorama I don't handle, I might have sprayed with a final matte varnish. But because it had loads of weathering on it, I wanted to keep the difference in tones with the chalky pigments, so I didn't want to dull them down with a varnish. Russ says, I live in the Pacific Northwest, awesome except for months of rain. Apparently the UK has now had, it was the 8, but I think it's now the 9 wettest consecutive months in its recorded history. So now this is where I diverge from people who paint everything black, because at this point I'm only going to put on colours that actually fix what I want. So I've picked a colour of tar grout that is the colour I want for my ground. It matches the rock quite well. That might be deliberate, because obviously the soil is made from decomposed rock plus plant matter. So your soil will normally be a darker, richer colour than your rock, because it will have organic matter in it that's often darker. But in this case, we're going to put grass over most of it. So I wanted to make sure that I had my base, anywhere that the grass isn't going to be, with tar grout that's the right colour. And for the road, again, I use the right colour that I want. This is something like chinchilla or something like that. It's actually just a beige tar grout, a sort of taupe tar grout. And I go through and I get it to what I want it to be. But I'm not going to paint this again. I could again weather it if I wanted. I could put drips on the road to show that it's dark. But part of me goes, I've got amazing products out there that are in the colours I want. I don't need to paint all of this. So I can get, and I've probably got about 8 or 10 different colours of tar grout. So I'll probably have a colour that's close to what I want. And so I use that to create what I want. If I was doing a rail yard, I use woodland scenic cinders in 2 different colours, black tar grout and grey tar grout, and actually wood ash, to create what I wanted. And I didn't paint it at all. I didn't dry brush it, I didn't do anything. I literally just put it on and as you can see here, glued it in place. And now I can go through building it up with different colours of things like ground foam. So this is woodland scenic ground foam, and there's a couple of blends, there's earth and turf and a few other colours that you'll get there that you can use to build up different colours. And you can get them to look like lichen or lichen, depending where you come from, and all the other colours that you need, moss, things like that. Lee, yeah, I think that works out about similar. We were going to do a Western themed D&D campaign, and I think I looked into it. Seeing you cast that plaster reminds me of Linker. Oh, Linker. Someone did offer me Linker molds and I said no. But Linker's basically really out of scale for the scale they were offering me to do it in, which was like HO or ON30, I think. It's a little bit big. So there we go. Now, I'm not advocating that you don't paint. If you can look at this model, you can see there's actually loads of paint. And you'll notice that I'm also weathering afterwards quite often. So it's not that there isn't paint going into my dioramas, just that sometimes you don't need to repaint things. I noticed a lot of people seem to repaint, and I do find it odd because my ability to paint rock isn't as good as my ability to find a nicely coloured rock in the garden and put it in place. Now, the rocks aren't normally the right shape, which is why I don't do that. But I can't get the look that I can get with mixing tar grout when I paint it. I'm not that skilled at painting. And I think a lot of people get quite put off, really, by painting. We've already had one comment today, I've not used my airbrush. And people find it really hard sometimes to get their head around painting. So I think I really did this to say to people, if you're not good at painting, perhaps try a few models where you don't need to paint them and you can practice your weathering and then worry about painting on the next thing you learn. And you can see here, grass often has a greener base and a beige top. So I've done a green base colour and then I'm going over it with a beige, longer grass on top to get that kind of late summer look, which is here. And again, this is a layering spray by WWS, and I'm going over it with more depth to get different heights on it. But in this, I haven't needed to paint this grass at all. Now, people do moan about how static grass can look a bit manky. So I have gone over this with a bit of green just to give it variety. But you could do this as easily by putting in different blends of green, putting on some extra colours. I'm adding in some ground phone here to sort of represent broadleaves. But you don't have to paint your grass. A technique I saw somebody, I think it was Geek Gaming, use was to put tar grout over the top. Who was that? Sorry if it was you and I didn't say it. And when you put tar grout over the top, it dulls down the shine of static grass, which is one of the problems with static grass. It can be a bit shiny. Or you can just go over it with a matte varnish if you're not worried. I picked this because I wanted to show that sometimes I paint and sometimes I don't. Stephen, hi Kathy and friends, everyone okay? Can't hear what's being said, my phone is stuck on silent mode, but I'm working night shift again, surprise, surprise. We've got 150 tonne of tar to lay tonight. Lucky you. You are the person that I see all the diversion signs for saying this road is shut tonight between 8 and 8, aren't you? Just waiting for the plane to finish. It was very exciting when they did the road outside my house. They did that a couple of years ago now. And very, very exciting to watch. I spent ages going outside and just watching them do it. It is really cool. So there we go. And for those of you who always ask what tea I'm drinking, this is actually just mint out the garden. It's amazing. My mint is up like anything. So I'm taking off sprigs of it. It's really, really good. This is another toy. One of the reasons I picked this video. I didn't paint this. I just went over it with, well, a bit of brown wash and dulled it all down. I didn't paint it at all. So that might even be a liquid pigment on the tyres. So I think it's, if you have a figure, this was a Hot Toys or something like that, you don't always need to paint them. Don't always reach for the paintbrush. Sadly, my 3D prints all need painting. But a lot of people now with 3D prints are starting to use, you're seeing a lot more multicolour units or whatever they're called. They've got different acronyms out there. And people can print amazingly detailed coloured spaceships and things like that there's one guy, Fabian, on Second Dynasty, and he tilts them and he gets stripes, warning stripes and everything. You can get some amazing effect just by coloured FDM prints. You could probably do the same in resin if you didn't mind swapping it out all the time. And he does amazing effects with changing at different layer heights and tilting his prints so that he gets those great effects. So if you have that, again, you've got an FDM in the right colour. Crix, who one of my print testers, printed all of my, it was like a desert ring from my first Kickstarter landing pad. He printed all that in a beige coloured FDM. Looked great, looked really good. And if you have a matte one, it actually looks great straight out. So do you need to paint it? Well, if you paint it and then weather it, you're going to highlight all of the lines with a wash. So actually, his looked almost as good out of there, straight off the printer, as mine did, painted and weathered. So sometimes I think you could look at things and go, maybe with all of the new technologies coming on, I don't actually need to paint as much as I think I do. So for his, thinking about how I would paint it if I wasn't trying, if I'd done it in multiple colours, I'd probably spray it with something like a matte varnish if it needed dulling down, which some FDM prints are shiny. And I might then use a pigment or something spattered on to get a effect, some kind of spattering effect. I might experiment with that, and I may at some point do a no paint FDM video, just to show. This is again Halo Infinite. I put up a Halo Friday post really, because I've done a lot of Halo videos and I've got some more to do, which are just weathering plastic toys effectively, and I'm working out what diorama to put them in. I've got earth. I've got fire and water. So I was probably going to do Earth, Wind and Fire or something at some point. But this is from the Infinite one. And I've got this beautiful warthog, which came like this. It came painted and with a little bit of weathering, quite bad weathering, I may add. So I took it apart and put in lights, scuffed it up so that it would have something to attach to, because it was a very shiny plastic. And that's a magic eraser sponge. And this is important. You can't really add weathering pigments easily to a shiny surface. So sometimes I would just spray them with matte varnish, as I've said, but sometimes you don't want to spray with matte varnish because you've got windscreens and you've got other things. And whilst you could put on the masking tape and spray the edges and spray it with a rattle can, and you could put on the windscreen wipers. This is what I'm trying to make with this thing. Windscreen wipers signs. Actually, I don't know that this even has a windscreen wiper. It may not even have a real windscreen. It's sci-fi. It may have some bug repellent thing on it. Who knows, that just keeps them from dying on your windscreen. But to get the washes to sit more evenly on this very shiny surface, I did scuff it first. I think the magic eraser sponges are something you buy for cleaning stuff. They're like white, they powdered away like mad, but I bought 20 of them and gave half to Mum for her kitchen and kept them. But again, principle of this video, and the one this has been chosen for, I didn't paint this. It already had all the decals on. It had the UNSC decals. It had everything that I wanted. Why would I want to redecal them? I don't have the decals. They're already on the toy. Why would I want to go through all that when I can just weather it down? Oh, and Tim has reminded you all to hit the like button. I can't see how many likes we've got. Oh, there we go. We've got almost as many likes as viewers, so that's really good. Jewel21, ever tried nettle tea? No. No. I can't imagine. I've tried yarg, is it, that's wrapped in nettles, but I've never tried nettle tea. Tamsin, MMU. I was trying to remember what the C was, and of course it's material. Multi-material unit. I knew there were MMUs, and I was looking at thinking, but what is that middle M? So they're like multi-material units, so you can put in 2 different materials if you wanted to have your supports in water soluble or a different material, so they're easier to get off. And then AMS is an automatic material system. Tamsin, you are brilliant, thank you. Mark, I've seen a company offering coloured 3D prints. You need to send the textures along with an OBJ file. So I didn't talk about actual coloured 3D prints, but I think Model U now does them. And I was certainly looking at them when I was going to take the job with Pocket Planet. And what they do is they actually print like an inkjet printer different colours, and you've got the 256. So you can actually get coloured 3D prints. And they're easier with scans. So someone like Model scans in colour and then doesn't use the colour information when he's doing a normal print. But he actually can keep that colour information. So if he has a figure with all the face coloured and the hair highlights, it saves someone painting it. And if you're not worried about, if you're worried about your ability to paint small figures, which quite frankly in HO scale I think I am, it could be great to have that scanning. It's just beginning to look good. At the moment, the resolution hasn't been that great in the smaller scales, but it's coming there. And I think if you're getting up to 1/6 and 1/12, the old gypsum colour ones were quite fragile, but the newer sort of nylon and the resin ones that are coming out, very expensive, but really, really, really good, like really good. So I think give it another 5 or 6 years, it will be a common thing, and suddenly all your 3D prints will be coloured as well for the fine detail stuff. But if you're like me and I've done, my little man like this, here we go, my little Bob, his name's Bob now, little man. I've actually coloured him in a render, so I could technically export him as an OBJ with all the colour information in. But an STL file that you're used to seeing for your 3D printers doesn't hold that information. It's not made for that. Ravenson said, I would like to build a warthog in 1:1. It's a very cool ATV. You do see them on YouTube with people that have done them, and obviously they've had them for the show. So this is me trying to do a rock face with tar grout. I painted my rocks the other day, on the other video, but with this I actually just tried to use tar grout because it is a rocky finish to provide the rock texture and colour that I wanted. I really struggled to get it to texture to look good, but not have to paint it. So rocks don't always have to be painted. You could go over them with something that's a pre-colour, and you could argue that tar grout is effectively pounded paint with a cement mixed in. So in some ways I'm probably cheating a bit by saying it's not painting, but on the other hand it comes out with a lovely chalky finish, and if you throw a few different colours into there, you sift them on or something, you could get a really, really good, I think, response. IDEX, independent dual extrusion extruder. That would be cool. That's for the 2 different ones, is it? So James, once quality colour 3D prints and smaller scales are viable, this will transform modelling. I am 100% with you. There'll be people who say it's cheating, and in some ways they could be, that they say it's cheating. I'm not sure it's cheating, but there will be people who say it. What I would say is that it will make it easier for the average modeller, which is what the majority of people are, because average means average. The majority of people are around the mean normally. It will enable them to create much better dioramas. And people are always the thing that gives dioramas away. They really are just so hard to get to look lifelike. That's why I like clones from Star Wars, because they have helmets on. They're much easier to get to look realistic. And you almost anthropomorphize, the people I know already, but you do what you do, you anthropomorphize them with your own emotion over the top of that blank helmet, which is what the Master Chief was supposed to be. Now again, I'm not painting or colouring this grass in any way, but you saw on the top surface, I'm using it to build up some depth around there with different colours, which enable it to really pop and come to life. So we've got tar grout and 3 or 4 different colours of turf and grass, and suddenly it looks realistic. And I haven't really painted anything on that top surface at all, though obviously I streaked some weathering on the side. This was essentially in my fireplace, this diorama. This is Warbler. It's thermoplastic that you can melt with a heat gun, and I'm using it to create clear strips for the explosion that he's jumping away from. Right, job's done, coffee acquired, time to relax. Good job stating. IDEX 2 print heads, thanks Tamsin. Tim, coloured 3D prints are the dream. I have a 009 coach design I've been stalling on finishing the prototypes for because of the lining out. Not my strong point. Lining out, I mean, it's really a struggle to get them straight. I've done decals in the past and then looked at them later and gone, that's not straight. By which point I've not got the varnish and weathering on. Oh, it's only 250 tonnes of tar. Well, that sounds worse than the 50 tonnes. Was it 150? Oh, 250. It's going up, Stephen, wrong way. I think this gets quite hot, this explosion, as a side point here. So just to warn, if you're going to do this, I don't leave mine on for long because I'm worried about the explosion being too hot, too close. I do feel that it needed more airspace and perhaps some vent holes if you want to do this. I wrapped this very tight, so effectively it insulates it. This is just cotton wool and polyfiber going on. Whew. I did try loads of different LED colours and stuff like that, and next time I'll just stick with the strips. They worked really well. And the yellows on the end didn't really show, but I was worried the strips pointed upward and I wanted a brighter yellow at the end. But they weren't as bright, the LEDs, and they just didn't really show as much. I couldn't use hot glue, which would have been quicker than that to dry, because it would have melted the base it was on. Yes, it's an explosion. I nicked this off watching loads of other people's YouTube videos. This is spraying inks. Inks are lovely to spray, by the way. They're normally quite thin, and they spray really nicely through an airbrush. So if ever you want to spray something and you want to practice, I mean, you can't use them as a base coat. They're good for weathering and things like this, and they're very good on this. I found I needed to go darker than I thought. It looked a bit orange to start with. It needed some black in it. Very creative. Thank you. Jaw21, do you ever use silicon sealants, as most tar grouts have their corresponding colour matched silicons? I haven't. The only thing I use silicon sealant for is water. So I used a translucent one. I'm not quite sure what I would use a silicon sealant for in modelling. And just, what would I use it for? One of the reasons I like tile grout is the chalky powdery finish you get is very much like a natural finish, because it's not glossy or anything. So I'm not sure I'd want it to be too, yeah. I ended up adding extra bits around the bottom to stop light leakage, which is why some of them look a different colour. And these trees were left over from the other halo diorama. And again, this is a wire tree that was left over from something else. When you've got enough stuff floating around, it's good. So there we go. The no paint part of this is the tar grout has a little bit of just, streaking on it. And the warthog, I haven't painted, I've just weathered. So there's no painting of the original. It's very muddy looking. And a lot of that will be, I went over it with a slurry of tar grout, I think. I use tar grout thin slurries instead of pigments when I'm doing big models because it's cheaper. So for terrain, I'd always do a thin slurry of tar grout instead of a pigment, because pigments come in, though I have got some WWS ones that come in big tubs, but pigments generally are like, and if you're doing massive, using tar grout is a much cheaper option and works almost as well for terrain, definitely, and for anything that's, more. So that's the end of the video. I thought I'd taken that off. So the next video we're going to look at is actually all about scenery, and it's one of my favourite little dioramas that I ever did, and I wanted to capture a scene that I had in my head of a little train in the Lake District, a little industrial line in the Lake District. And so what I did was create, it's only an A4 diorama, so it's only about this big, but I wanted really detailed and I wanted to go into it. Oh, hang on, no, the next one's this one. Oh, that's interesting. I put this up on Friday, that might be why that's here. This is also I don't think there's any paint in this diorama, but time will tell. See, this was fun. You can splotch. I really couldn't get the vehicles in Halo Infinite. They were just a little bit too light on the touch. So this is also no paint, using much the same techniques, because quite frankly, why paint when you can buy toys the right size? So that paint is there for sealing, and it's Mod Podge, and I obviously did paint. There's paint coming on this because it's going to be bright white otherwise. But there's Mod Podge and just brown paint, which is also what's going on here. This is the only paint in the whole diorama. I'm pretty sure of this, but time will tell. I might be wrong. And what I've done is I've generally used tile grout and you can see I'm just wiping it off here, to get the colour that I want. So that brown is so the white doesn't show through. It's important when you've done sculpt mould that you do cover it, or anything white like plastic, you do cover it before you start doing tile grout. Otherwise you'll have to put 50 layers of tile grout on just to cover up the white. And if anything shows through, it will show as white, which isn't very realistic. So you do want to make sure you get it on. But then this is Wooden Scenics Talus, and it comes in 3 or 4 colours, and I really like this natural colour. It's the colour I'm going to use for the stones here. I don't need to paint this because it's come in the right colour. I've bought something that colour matches what I envisage this stream to look like. So Ravenson says the Warthog looks a little bit like a Peugeot Hogar design study for an off-roader. Probably is. I mean, the Halo Warthog must be 25 years old. No, when did Halo come out? Was it 2000 or something? Is it that old? It's the game that came out with the original Xbox, and you drive around in it. And that, in fact, there's a whole Warthog run at the end of the game where it's timed, and you have to get out of the exploding pillar of autumn before everything blows up, and it's timed. And I'm sure it took me a day or something to get through it the first time. I was slightly better the second time. I've started replaying, but haven't finished replaying. I think I'm only on 2 at the moment. I'm still in Mombasa probably. It's kind of the pick-up one, but at the moment I'm reading instead. So this is UV resin. It's brilliant. If you haven't used UV resin, the torch works, but stick it outside or stick it in a 3D print curing station if you really want it to go, because it's a bit squeaky otherwise. And I've got this homemade UV one I used at the time. I've actually got a proper one now as well. And what's great about it is this is jewellery resin rather than printer resin, and it is crystal clear because it's for jewellery. So it doesn't get the yellowing that you get with 3D printer clear resin generally. And it's really good, so it's great for water effects. And this is the splash that I'm doing. So I'm creating my splash in UV resin. Then I'm going to add polyfiber and Woodland Scenic Snow. I never use Woodland Scenic Snow for snow. It's too coarse, and I'd always use Precision Ice and Snow or micro balloons instead. So I've never used it for proper snow. I just don't like it. I can see it maybe on a barbed wire fence or on a some kind of vegetation for that. Give it a little bit more sort of density to it. But quite frankly, I'd never actually use it for snow or anything else. But when it comes to water froth, it's top of its class. I really, really use it for almost every water diorama now if I'm going to put white water on it, because it's just so good. And this here is me using UV resin to seal the side. I didn't get this to work that well. I think I should have put it in a 3D print box. But because the resin can sink down, you can actually seal the ends before you put epoxy resin in and create a nice watertight seal before you have to fill it up. Especially sometimes it will go round the end, so it's useful from that point of view. And this then was, I was sent it by Green Stuff World, I think, or Knock, one of the two. This could have been Knock actually. And this was a really nice resin, but it's just hard to get hold of in the UK, so I haven't used it again since. But it was a really nice resin. And I mixed in a bit of blue, but I wanted a bit, but I'm not a fan of over blue rivers. I've seen some tabletop games especially, where they're not so much into realism, and they're bright blue, and I'm just like, oh. I went to see The Phantom Menace at the cinema on Friday, and then watched the rest of them again as well, just the first 3. I watched them only like a month ago for the pod racing anyways, and one thing I noticed was how blue the water is that Jar Jar Binks jumps into. I don't know what they've done to it, but it is incredibly blue. So the Hogger concept is from 2004, says Ravenson. I don't know. I think that might be after Halo came out. Yeah. So again, once this is here, I'm relying, I've got that base coat of paints and no white shows through, but I'm relying on the colours in the tile grout, in the rocks that I've put on, and in the grass to create the colour in this diorama. Nothing gets painted in this scenery. Now, you'll see, I think it's on this one. It is on this one. I go over the grass with tile grout to tone it down. And that's really great technique if you want to tie grass into the middle of a road like that, where it's gone into the water. And what's really great about it is it creates a sort of more grass growing out the soil than you get if you put the grass on the surface like this with afterwards. It just gives a more bedded in grass look. So that's where I'm going. Here we are, that's me doing it. And so the bits around here where you want to bed them in, they just look so much more bedded in, and you just spray it with a bit of water, and because there's glue in the tile grout, it sticks itself. You don't even need to put glue down. So Macquarie siding, I almost exclusively use tile grout for ground cover and rock wall. I spray a surface with basing glue, apply the grout, let it set up, and then make a brush to blend in the different colours. That is really cool. And yep, ever since I found tile grout, which was on some forum before they even had YouTube, so I didn't invent it. I was like, I don't know. It was only a few years into my modelling. So almost all my modelling has always had tile grout in it. Almost everything I've always done has had tile grout in it. And I had to laugh because I saw somebody do an article for Model Railroad 3 or 4 years ago, and they go, I've discovered tile grout. And it always makes me laugh because we have these products. I watched another video, Jason Jensen, and he discovered AK Interactive Sludge. And you have these products that you think everybody knows about because you've seen them on YouTube, you've used them in all your dioramas, you've seen loads and loads of people use them. And then someone goes, I've just discovered this new product. And you're like, oh, well, you know, I saw someone doing that 20 years ago and I nicked it off them then. And it's funny, isn't it, how just depending which bit of modelling you're in, whether you're in railways, whether you're in military, what products you saw. So I noticed that suddenly tabletop gaming will discover oil washes when they haven't used them for donkey's years. But back when I was first learning model railways, before everything else came out, people had to use them because there wasn't anything else. So it's funny how you can see these products kind of bounce around all the different streams of modelling, and a lot of the weathering stuff comes out of like military for me, and then you see them going into other products. So this is polyfibre with woodland scenic snow on it, and it's just glued in place with UV. But yeah, I mean, tile grout is excellent. I rave about it. In fact, I did a whole video on what's my favourite, the one product I couldn't live without, and it was tile grout. Because literally I couldn't live without it. I do use it all the time. So here we go, that one, no paint in it. I did actually just realise I just painted the mongoose to tone it down a bit. But it didn't have to have any paint on it. I could have done that with a pigment or something, or even just a matte varnish would have toned it down a bit. So there we go. And it comes out really well, I think, considering I didn't actually paint anything except the white plaster, so it wasn't white. Mint tea done. Oh, do you know, I really enjoyed doing these. I've still got I don't think I've got a Banshee. They did loads and loads of these, and they were some of them were quite expensive. Like the Mantis was 90 quid, so I didn't buy it because I didn't have 90 quid to spend on it. But I've got the little hovering, is it a ghost? I think it's a ghost, isn't it? The little hovering one. I've got that one, and I was going to do that. So this is water, and I've got fire, and that was going to be air. And then I just needed to work an earth one out. But I've also got an Escherham that's about this size that I was going to do. And I've got loads of plans for Halo ones. And maybe I'll do them again when the next game comes out. But realistically, I need to work out, A, how to not read as much so that I should do more modelling again. And B, I need to find the balance. This is the one that was the Lake District, so we'll see it here. There is obviously paint in this, and don't get me wrong, I have painted things like the white on the water and the stones have got paint on them. But, you know, this is the original photo that I was just using. That's my friend Graham in the background, Rachel and Graham, friends that I often go on holiday. We used to go walking, but they walk far more than I can now. But we still go on holiday occasionally. And I wanted to create a backdrop and a plan. So I tried to work it all out to, ask me what that man is, to get it. This is me 3D planning. People say to me, what do you do? And how do you plan? And I'm like, yeah, okay. Sometimes it's really basic, but this was me trying to work out. Obviously I broke that glass. That wasn't very good. Tar grout is very versatile for scenery. Just to extol tar grout a bit more, I've used it for deserts, I've used it for adobe buildings in deserts, whatever the Star Wars ones are. You know, I've used it for everything sand beaches, mixed in with real sand. I always mix my tar grout with real sand because it's a bit too fine a powder otherwise to get glue to run through easily. So I always put some percentage of sand in. Basically, very much anything you think under the sun that's got a slightly sort of powdery texture, you can use it. Muddy roads, tar grout. Dry roads, tar grout. All there. So I would have bought this kit, I think. I don't think I ever got a free one from them. They offered me a free one, and I said, oh, that's lovely. I've got a lot of them, and I'd love one of these, and then they never sent it me. You find that sometimes. I think they ask 100 YouTubers, would you like free stuff? And they pick the best ones that come back to them, and I obviously wasn't the best one. So there we go. They still write frequently to ask me to do stuff. And I look at them and I think, I haven't put a YouTube video out in the month of whatever the last month was. April. You know, so come on, why are you asking? I guess maybe I'm supposed to plug it on my live streams. So there we go. Actually, talking of plugging things, I should have brought the spaceship in here. Maybe I'll run and get that towards the end from Second Dynasty. So there we go. Right, I'm going to go and run and get that spaceship while I remember. Okay, whilst that's going, this is my Second Dynasty Erebus shuttle that's printed. I haven't done the interior yet, and it probably won't get painted for a video whilst his Kickstarter's on, mostly because my Kickstarter's due soon and I'm behind on it. But, you know, this is a great shuttle. I put a link to the Kickstarter that this is on. There's another shuttle on it, the Typhon, and you can get that. It's right near the top of the chat, but if you go up, you'll see there's two links. One's to my Kickstarter, which is pinned as well. So plug for please go and back my Kickstarter, which is the Pod Racers, and one for Second Dynasty, Ben and his team for two little, and they're playable interiors, so you can, hang on, I'm going to put this down because I'm holding it by the top, and you can see there's an interior. So if you want to play a game that needs interiors, there's a playable interior. There's a couple of things missing out of here because they're on a separate bit. I've just primed it, I haven't done anything else, and I need to get it upstairs and take some photos along with a few other things. I normally try and do sort of that sort of thing on a Tuesday. I have like my, yes, it's time you need to do social media, you hate it, but you still need to do it sort of day. But there we go. There we go. So, Ramerson, this looks a little bit like the rescue shuttle from Nostromo. Ben is a huge Alien Nostromo fan, and I believe his Kickstarter later in the year will be a Nostromo or something like that. So do expect that to come later. Now at this point, I didn't paint this with brown, which was really stupid. I painted with tar grout. So you can see here, I'm building up layers and layers of tar grout. Why I didn't bother painting it with brown. And in the bottom of the base, I also went over and of the river, I also went over and put the tar grout and put down the rocks. Now I should have painted brown on the areas that I was going to grass. I really should have, because that green, that white that shows through it comes through. So you don't ever do this and just leave your white. Always put a bit of soil colour on there. So Tamsin says the Persephone is the main ship for later this year. I need to watch some of his live streams again, Tamsin. I've got out the habit of watching YouTube and I've been working. So at this point I did paint all the bit in between, but I should have painted it before I put the tar grout on, was where I was with that one, which is why I did it with an airbrush. If I'd done it before, I could have just literally gone over it with, you know, tar grout later and not worried. So these are colours for painting my rocks. Now I normally would leave them the colour that I want, but the tar grout has gone over the top and made them look quite brown. So I wanted them to be more grey, which is the colour of the Lake District. Don't be afraid to go through and paint, even though I said this is a no paint video, you know, sort of thing. Don't be afraid to go through and paint, especially if, like these ones, there's loads of lichen on the top of the rocks, and they're in the water, so you get some colours. So you do need to probably go through and spatter on a bit of lichen and other things, like I'm doing here. A little bit, and I've gone over with a green wash. I cannot say how much I love washes. Even if you're not painting, you should always have a wash. You should always have a wash, even when you're not painting something. It needs to have something over it. Here's a black wash going on the bottom of the stream to just make sure that it's dark enough to be the bottom of a river. It's kind of a river, I think, rather than a stream. And there's a bit of forced perspective here because it gets really small that far back. Lichen doing here, says Ratty Rex. Yeah. This is, I think I used, this is acetate as the dam. I've used everything for a dam and every type of glue, and there's no really good glue. I found hot glue goes off too quickly. I've had leaks out of everything that I've ever used as a glue. But if you've got time, silicone sealant's a good glue, and white glue's fine if you've got time for it to go off. I find they're the least damaging and most easy to peel off. What I like about UV resin is that it's great for going around the ends. You know, it seals them, you can pre-seal them, but it does leave a thin film then when you take them off, which you then have to sand or clean off or something. This is Envirotex Light, really old. It's gone brown, and it's probably browning my river as we speak. But as I'm not fussed about browning rivers because it's already a brown river, I'm just going to let it go. I think this was my not goodie bag that they sent me to do things. And what you can see is you can get so many colours already that you don't need to worry about, you know, producing bright flowers. What I find a struggle is to find sludgy colours, and I find Nocker a lot brighter because Europe has really bright greens. Someone said woodlands. I find Woodland Scenics green too sludgy. I won't use it. And one of the reasons I think Woodland Scenics is so sludgy is because they say the greens in America are different to the greens in Europe. But if you go to a European hillside, it is the bright knot greens. It really is. But they have bits of red in there and other colours. If you want something that's more like a Welsh hillside or a Scottish hillside, WWS are really good. They have some really, really great sludgy browns and dead grass colours that can really do wonders in those sorts of locations. And you can see here I'm putting on my glue round the rock work to make sure I don't get grass stuck on it, because grass doesn't stick to rock. So it's important you don't get your glue on the rocks. And I'm using a much smaller brush to go round the rocks themselves. And this is just a thin white glue, I guess. Maybe even matte medium. Clean it all well off your river. But there we go. So, due to the video in the live stream, this rail road diorama is very lovely. It puts a heart thing, so I can't read. Do you plan to do some railroad stuff again in the future? I have got rid of all my railroad stuff at the moment because I hadn't got enough space. And what I kept was all the scenery supplies because I like doing dioramas. But because most of what I do now is 3D prints and they're not for railroads, I can't envisage in the near future having time. And the problem with that, with time just in general, is I spend all my day designing stuff, you know, prints, and it's a full-time job to design Kickstarters. And with the amount of money that I earn from them, I need to do 4 a year. And that is basically all my time spent doing those. And then at weekends, I plan to do modelling because that's what I used to do when I worked full-time. But what I've found is I'm still not quick enough at the actual modelling. I'm still learning. This is me dulling down grass with just a spray. It's a good technique to just dull your static grass down if you want. If you haven't found the right colour, you can definitely dull it down with. But as this is a no paint one, you don't have to if you don't want to. But I just haven't found. I'm not fast. So my first mini that I did took a week. My second mini that I did took a shorter week, maybe a working week, 5 days as opposed to 7 days. My next mini that I did, sorry, just an aside, this is me putting tar grout on to again sort of add extra texture into the grass. A, it dulls it down, and B, it beds it in. So that's pretty cool. And you can see the difference between the half I've done and the half I haven't. So my next mini probably also took 4 or 5 days, and the mini after that took 4 or 5 days. And then I've got to support them for resin, I've got to test print them, at some point I've got to paint them. By the time I've done all that, I haven't got time to then model, and I do have chores I have to do and stuff like that. So I've actually struggled a huge amount with finding time to model. And my next lot of videos that we'll be doing at this rate will be the pod race ones. So I'm not sure when I actually will get time. And if I look at my interests now, I really love sci-fi. I'm doing Star Wars. I love doing it. I've got a lot of tabletop gaming stuff to put together because I play it. And I'm still running with grey primered clones and stuff, though I am getting better. It's a really difficult one to find time. And in the end, something had to give. And model railroads ended up being the thing that gave space-wise. There was 100 crates of model railroad stuff. And then time-wise. And if I've got time to spare, I've got some cosplay I'd like to do. I've got back projects that have been sat on my shelves for 4 or 5 years now. The Titanfall helmet being one. Every now and then I'll do a resurgence of the Titanfall helmet and it will get like a week's worth work. So I need to do this Kickstarter, see how it goes. If it doesn't do well, I'll have to do 2 more this year. If it goes well enough, I could probably do 1 big one and 1 smaller one, maybe. If it does badly, I'll have to do 2 big ones this year. And fitting them in is quite hard work. A lot of people out there, so there's a lot of competition. So I'm struggling a bit, really, just with time. It's a very, very long-winded answer to a very short question. So the answer is no in the future. But I will be doing more scenery. At the moment, I've got a set of Bad Batch, for example, which are due to have all of the scenery done on them, and there was going to be a swamp, a ship, but quite a bit of scenery. I've got the one I started upstairs, and it's just still there. It's just still there. Tim says, Quarrel Comeback is progressing very slow due to lack of time. Full-size railways and life in general took over. However, CCB, Quarrel Comeback, does have a model show outing soon, so I need to do something. I do find that having deadlines is the only way I get stuff done. So I've got to get my deadline. I thought I took the front of this off, but obviously not enough. I've got to get the front of my stuff done for Tuesday, putting all my people to get back together because I'm playing. But without it, the people will stay in the same box they fell apart in. They may even have lost one or two of them when I lent them out. I don't know yet. They'll just stay there. But yeah. I also need to box up all my stuff, terrain to take to the show for them. But I'll have a chat with them about it as well. I do use a lot of pre-made tufts. You can make your own tufts, but if you want dual tone or really tall ones, I don't find my, you can hoover them upright, but I don't find my tall grass ever goes quite as tall as you'd perhaps like. And these ones I think are made in containers that hold them more upright like this. So it is useful to buy tufts. It's also lazy, and sill floor tufts always used to be the best. I don't even know if sill floors still make tufts, but I had 1,000 sill floor tuff types, and I've still got some that I haven't used, and they're brilliant. I really love them. In fact, I took a lot of green off my layout, so I'm not short on green. It's coming out of boxes and crates. I got rid of a lot of crates of green, but I've still got other crates of green just around. So there we go. It's funny. I do miss doing this type of modelling, this sort of scenery, and creating it all. So I hopefully I can get some of this done for the little Bad Batch dioramas. But yeah, going back to time, I'm hoping if I can get to 3 Kickstarters a year and speed up in what I do, I hope that I'd be able to spend more time in between sort of doing more modelling, because I'm very focused when I'm doing a Kickstarter. I want to do the Kickstarter. So what I would want to do is have time in between. That's like bracken, in case you're wondering what it is, that's fallen over and died. I'd want to do a Kickstarter. I want to get it done. And then what I want to see is maybe have some time off. So I'd like to have time off over the summer, but I think my next Kickstarter is going to, after this one that's coming up, is probably going to be 2 temples. But what I found in my minis doing this time, I'm getting faster, but you know, it is 6 completely different designs which are then posed to 2 or 3 poses. Whereas I look at some people's Kickstarters, and you know, they might do 12 minis, which sounds twice as many as me, but those 12 designs all have more or less the same clothing, and they might be, say you were doing clones, you might have them all more or less the same, with maybe markings different or guns different or something like that, and then poses different, but you're posing the same thing, so it becomes easier to pose. But you might have 12 of them, but they're all the same base model with tweaks. Whereas I've got 6 completely different alien creatures, and aliens are harder to do. So it's actually taken me quite a long time. And I'm still learning, so some of my stuff's a bit thin. I don't think all the work necessarily shows, especially when I then look at it. I think you could blow them up. I mean, I've decimated them down, so they're not as big, but I think you could blow them up and there's a lot more detail in them. So yeah, that's a very long-winded way of saying I would love to, but time just doesn't get there. Russ says, I totally understand the chore thing. I have a house and a yard to take care of. I'm building plastic and wood structure kits right now. I've not touched my layout in months. Yeah, that is always the problem, isn't it? I mean, at least plastic and wood structure kits are actually for your layout, presumably. I've always preferred dioramas to my layout. Even when I had the layout, I still built all of what's in this room, apart from Dagobah, more or less, whilst I had my HO layout. And the truth is, I should never have done a big layout, because my attention span is more small. I like dioramas because I can finish them. I like them because I can do different concepts. I did an explosion, you saw it. I can do a Lake District the next week, well, next 3 or 4 weeks. It's fine. I really, really like doing the variety. And and I've actually now got in the habit that a lot of my design is online on a computer. So there we go. So this is, I don't think, this is just a gel medium. I don't know which one it is, I'm afraid. Probably just a acrylic gloss gel. And I'll paint the white, and this will dry clear. and then I'll paint the white in over the top for the rapids. There we go. Mod Podge is a bit thinner, so I don't really use it except if I want fine ripples. One thing that I really wanted to achieve with this diorama is layers and layers of colour and texture, and to really capture the fact that grass is not just one green colour. And I think it's really important. I mean, I'm using pigments now to add different colour. This is tar grout still, but I can see pigment bottles there as well, to add different colours of texture in. And I think people, I look at dioramas and work that people do, and they'll often spray one colour, a base coat or something, and then they will spray, I don't know why I'm doing this yellow. I don't think I like the yellow and it went green. They'll spray one colour, and then they'll put one weathering colour on, one panel line colour, and that'll be it. And I think if I could encourage everybody to do one thing, it would be to add another 4 or 5 layers of colour or texture into there. So instead of painting everything one base coat, perhaps consider painting the tops in a faded colour. Or, if you're like me, use an oil wash of a paler colour to paint your tops, and paint it a paler colour on top with the wash. Leave the wash on it to give an uneven colour. I think it's very important then to build up layers of weathering, different colours, different textures, different finishes, mattes and satins and things like that. The yellow was the undercoat that I then took off by, I obviously hairbrush sprayed it in between. I actually probably used a MIG or AK Interactive or something, one of their weathering sprays, where you spray it on, and then if you go with water you can peel it, like I'm doing here, back to its original colour. I think I overdid it. I think it's a little overdone. Yeah, I thought it was overdone. So I've now gone over it again and painted half of my splots out because it was too overdone. It is possible to overdo weathering. It really is, especially for items that are in service. If it's running, the chances are that it's not a rust bucket, because real life railways actually need to pass safety measures and run. They need to be safe, and you can't do that if you're rusted through. So there. Anyway, I could have left these in the original plastic, but I didn't want a blue loco. I wanted a green loco. And the reason I chose green is it's actually more of a British colour green. But also, and this is, you can see how I weathered the top a different colour using, in this case, white. But I think these were oil brushes. They're just oil paint. But green didn't clash as much. I thought the blue would clash, and also I wanted them to be heavily rusted on the outside of these tipper wagons that are quarry probably wagons. I wanted them to be quite rusted where the inside would have been bashed, which is quite common. Locos themselves may not be rust buckets, but quite often the wagons that you have will be quite beaten up. So it's important that this didn't clash too much with all those subtle greens and everything that I put in the diorama. And in this instance, I have rusted it quite heavily, but generally around areas that would get wear, not all over the place. So top of the chimney, which might get heat, so it blisters the paint a bit more. And then the man's just didn't fit, so I had to cut his legs off. Those legs were on the side until recently. I found one the other day. I was like, oh, I kept his legs. Why would you keep legs from a model? Why? And again, here I'm using pigments as another layer of colour. Or in this case, I'm putting a gloss oil enamel, actually, over the top to make sure that the front looks a little bit oily or something, where the, I don't know if I liked it, but there we go. A little bit of stuff coming out for the oil to try and build up kind of the grout that you get. Now, we were talking about 3D printing people and colours. I am not good at 3D printing, but I have to say, if you look at these people, they don't have decent faces, so it's hard to put even a wash on them and get the wash to look settled down into the areas, because they just don't have what you get from a scanned or the quality you have now. So, ¿por qué no tienen la opción de traducir con subtitles on otros idiomas que I don't actually speak any other languages, and I don't know if YouTube does automatic translations, but it costs money to get them translated into other if you can't do it yourself. And I didn't make any money from this. In fact, I lost money for years doing YouTube full time. So it just boils down to I can't speak other languages, and I don't think YouTube subtitles in other languages automatically, and I can't afford to get somebody else to subtitle them for me. So that's the reason, I'm afraid. Mega. Tamsin, legs from a model, chapless, drunken in a barrel. I could have, yeah. Chap-ass in and dunked in a barrel. That would have been quite fun. Unfortunately, I lost one straight away, so I actually only had one leg. I had a couple of other legs, so I actually had 3 legs when I threw them out, and they're on a little pile in the corner of my kitchen. It was only when I finally tidied it out a month or so ago, and I was like, 3 legs. 3 legs. Not even matching legs. So that was basically the end of my no painting. Now you saw actually there was a lot of paint went into that diorama, and I layered it up. So it is a bit of a cheat to say that was a no paint. But a lot of what I used were products that you can easily add in, like tile grout over the top, different colours of tile grout, and then pigments going into it. So if you feel uncomfortable with painting, I would say try doing some models that don't need painting and see how you go. If you want to practice your weathering, but you never quite get round to it, pick up a toy. Pick up a toy and practice your weathering on that. Practice your panel lines, practice everything else. You don't need to paint it as well. And what I find is if I've spent hours doing a really immaculate paint job, I'm reluctant to weather it because I'm like, ooh, but I've just spent hours getting this beautifully clean paint job. So yeah, there we go. Russ says the scanned figures are quite impressive compared to even injection moulded figures. Oh, definitely. I mean, you can get some great injection moulded figures now, but the scanned figures are amazing because they just capture so much. And also the scanned figures you can have in bigger scales. What's great about a scanned figure is the person selling it, like Model you can have it in any scale. So if you're doing an odd scale, which people do, 1:64 S scale, not big in the UK. So you might not be able to get that many figures for it, but yes, yeah, just one of those things. If you've got it in 3D, you can do it in 1:64 if you have it in 1:87. It's just so easy. Stating the obvious, oh, you translated it. Well done. Because you don't have the option to translate with subtitles into other angles, which regrets a lot of Chachara, Paleberia. More thanks. I answered it, but thank you for the translation. I kind of guessed it through. There we go. I don't even presume it's Spanish, presumably. I don't know, European. Right, so that video's finished, and I think I've talked about no paint models to death. I've mentioned my plug for this. I've mentioned my plug for Kickstarter. So I'm just going to talk for the last quarter of an hour about something that I heard this morning. Yes, it was at church. Don't worry, it's not a church thing. And someone was talking about identity and how an author had struggled to criticise his work because he felt that he had to be for him to have any worth in his writing, he was an author, he had to be the best writer. And because he had to be the best writer, if he looked at his work and it was anything but great, he couldn't cope with that. Which I thought was interesting, because as a creator, I'm my worst critic. If you think you can write something bad about my work online, people do occasionally, yeah, I might be upset because you've criticised me, because who actually likes real criticism, as opposed to, and also in the model railroad world, you get used to people leading with criticism. They'll walk in, they'll look at, say, my Lake District diorama and go, yes, well, this bit over here is wrong, or I don't like the people, or something. But the problem they were talking about was this guy felt he had to be the best. He had to be the best writer, and so he couldn't critique himself. I've always found it to be the opposite, actually. I want to be the best modeler because I'm aspirational at doing really well. So I want to be a top flight modeler, but I'm my own worst critic, and I will only see the flaws in my work. So what I therefore wanted to just quickly chat about was, people often think they have to be the best at something. And for most people, this is a hobby. It's my job, but even I fell into the thing of, I've got to be successful in this job to be good at it. Now, I'm just going to unpack that. I love modelling. I love physical modelling. I love 3D design modelling. I love modelling. I gave up a really successful financial consulting career to become a full-time modeler, and I struggled to find my way. I did content creation, I wasn't successful at it. I wrote a book, never want to write another one, the hard work, for not a lot of money. And eventually I ended up in 3D print design, which I actually could spend all day doing. I love doing, I don't enjoy doing rocky bases when they take 4 days to make them printable, but I love doing 3D print design. I really love creating worlds and doing these designs, and I've got so many ideas, I'm energized, but really enjoy it. But I fell into the trap that because my YouTube channel wasn't successful, and I wanted to get to 100,000 more or less over lockdown, and I'm still not there yet, because I wasn't successful at so much of what I planned to do, and I'd been a successful financial contractor, but I didn't want to be a successful financial contractor, so if I didn't do well in a job, I wasn't as fussed about it. But my creativity was a part of me, and I wanted people to tell me I was brilliant at it. And so when I didn't do well at things, I really took it to heart, and it really hit home, and I struggled. And what I took away, and I think this morning reminded me of this, I had to learn that I took this job, and most of you do this as a hobby, for enjoyment. And it doesn't matter whether you're good at it. It does matter for me because obviously I need to sell the stuff. There has to be a bar for my modelling, but it doesn't matter if you're the best at it. It doesn't matter if your modelling is better than somebody else's, as long as you're enjoying the modelling and the journey and you're happy. And I think so much of what we see on social media is one-upmanship to some extent. I think a lot of criticism is one-upmanship. It's I'm going to tell you how you could do it better. I've never modelled a single thing in my life, but I'm going to tell you how you could do better, because then I'll feel really good. I literally have had people write and tell me the sky is blue and clouds are smaller to the horizon when I posted a video on doing clouds. Somebody wrote and told me the sky was blue and it gets paler to the horizon and the clouds get smaller. And I'm like, I put that in the video. I've written a book on this. It's in the book. Why did you feel the need to write and tell me that? And I realised it's not, and I'm thinking, do you think I'm so stupid that I don't know the sky's blue, it gets paler to the horizon, the clouds get smaller? Do you think I don't know that? It's not about me, it's about them. A lot of criticism is not at all about you, it's about them. It's about them wanting to show you that they understand things, that they know things, that they're intelligent, they're on your level. Brilliant. It's also about people wanting to show that they can engage with you, and so they make a criticism because it's a way of engaging. And it's also about people wanting to feel superior, but most people aren't. Most people don't criticise from a negative point. They criticise because that's the expectation. So anyway, I was listening to this morning and thought the most important thing I have learned over the 4 years now that I've been doing this, I went full time as a content creator 4 years and a couple of months ago, is that I don't have to be the most successful person on YouTube. I don't have to have as many subscribers as Luke Towan, thank goodness. He started after me, massive channel now. I don't have, and well deserved, he does brilliant work. I don't have to have as many social media likes. I don't have to have any of that. I don't even need my Kickstarters to be £100,000 successful. I mean, I'd like them to make enough money that I can afford my bills, but you know, I'm in a position of, I actually made a profit in my company last year, so that's good. I don't need that. I changed from my high paid job to this so I could enjoy it. So for me, the message I want to leave you, I'm just going to go and look in chat in a sec, with is, this is a hobby. Don't make your identity in your hobby about being the best. Make it about enjoying your hobby. Learn to be content with what you can achieve. That's not to say you don't push yourself, but don't beat yourself up if something doesn't work. Don't dwell on your mistakes, and don't think that if you're not the most lauded best person with the highest social media and YouTube, that your modelling is somehow lesser. It isn't lesser. It's, you know, I can look at other people who do better Kickstarters than me. I can look at other people that make more money than me. It's not a competition between us. In some ways we all rise together, but it's about, this is a journey. This is my journey in this part of my life, about enjoying my work-life balance, enjoying my work and getting great satisfaction out of it. And I don't need to earn 100,000 on a Kickstarter. Not saying, if you want to buy a pod racer, please do, to get that satisfaction. It's got to be about the journey to get to the Kickstarter as much as about the money that it comes from, as long as I make enough money to live, obviously. There we go. Russ says, for me, constructive criticism is always welcome. Typically, I'm harder on myself than anyone else could be. I am so my worst critic. When I first did Say That Lake District, I would have pointed out to anybody who asked me about it the 20 flaws in it. Now, a couple of years later, I can't remember the flaws, thankfully, so I don't look at it in the same eyes, but I will remember the flaws. I sometimes remember things I said to someone that I felt were a bit off from school, and I look at it and I go, I shouldn't have said that. I'm like, flipping out, and how they remember it. I was at school talking to them. Some of these conversations will have been 35 years ago. Water under the bridge. Learn to forgive yourself, Kathy. Adam says you're an inspiration. Thank you. Lee, very true. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. That's very true. You will never be perfect. And a lot of people say to me, like, you need to change this on the diorama. I will never go back and rework a diorama. I will integrate the lessons I learn into the next one. So stating the obvious, I'm an imperfect perfectionist. Aren't we all? Tim says excellent advice. Russ says fun is the key. There used to be a slogan, model railroading is fun. It's a very good slogan. Jaw21, it's just like in life, there are people less fortunate than yourself and people more fortunate. Yeah, I sometimes see on YouTube this sort of thing that hard work trumps skill any day. I don't actually agree with it, because I don't think, even if I worked as hard as I possibly could, I could run as fast as Usain Bolt. There is definitely some, I'm not a gifted artist. I mean, I can't draw a face and it looks like the person. I can probably do a 3D one better now. But that doesn't mean that I can't get good at things. But I think hard work and talent will trump hard work without talent, and talent with no work probably won't go anywhere at all. So there's definitely a piece around the harder you work, the better you'll get. But if you're just not good at drawing, I mean, I'm tone deaf. I can't do music. There's no way I'll ever do a Beethoven symphony. Doesn't mean that I couldn't learn to do music, but I'd never enjoy it. So find what you're skilled at and you enjoy. And if you like the hard work and you don't feel particularly skilled, but you need to learn it, like using your airbrush, learn it as a piece, but don't do a lot of projects that need huge amounts of intricate airbrushing. You know, if you don't like it, just don't do as much with it. It says here, if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. It's true, but trust me, when I'm doing social media for what I do, it still feels like I'm working. Actually, a business is probably 20%. I still have to do accounts and VAT and all these other things. So I love what I do, and I really feel blessed and happy and content where I am. And I think that's the secret to being happy in life, is being blessed and feeling happy where you are. But it is true. Digger says very wise words. Tim, I love work. I can sit and watch it all day. I think a lot of men working, I see them working sometimes, and there's 2 gaffers and 3 men working, and the gaffers just stand there and watch the men working. And I sometimes think, that's the job. You just stand and watch other people work. Timber, happy to model to standard of 6 to 10, working towards 8. I know I'll never achieve 9 photorealistic. And I think that's a point. I mean, I can achieve, for that Lake District one I did, I thought that was I was actually very happy with that. And it came out really good in photos, but it's only this big. You know, if you want to do a model railway that's 20 foot square or 6 foot square or 8 foot square, you're never going to put as much detail in as you are to an A4 diorama. And that's why I do dioramas, because I can detail them up a lot more. So I think there's also a standard of what are you doing. Model railways do your best work, the 8 to 10 at the front, and leave the 6 to 10 at the back. If you're doing a diorama, put the best stuff that you have at the front and put the rest at the back. You know, it really is about being smart, isn't it? So anyway, I wanted to leave everybody with that piece that don't try to be the best. Try to improve on yourself each time. Try to learn something new for you. But if you want to be the best, and one of the things they said in this video, it was Tim Keller, I think, that if you're the best person in your little town, best violin player it was, in your little town in Texas, he's obviously American, and you get on a train and you go to New York and you walk past the first busker with a violin making money in Penn Station, and they're better than you, what happens to your self-worth? Because the guy on the side of the road playing a violin for money is better than you, and you are the best person in your town. If that was your self-worth, you've just lost it. So never strive to be the best. Just strive to be good at what you do and to enjoy it. That is my thought for the day. So I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you to everybody for coming. I hope you found it useful. I'm hoping to have got some modelling done by the next one, because I would actually really do need to do some real modelling. I still have the Thunderbirds to do. I still have all the Bad Batch ones to do. I still have the Timefall helmet to do. I still have some cosplay helmets to do. And I still also have all my pod races to paint. So I'm hoping that I will get some modelling done. And it may be I do a longer version of some of the stuff that I'm painting for the pod races, but we'll have to see. Maybe put a diorama on them or something, which will then go into the Kickstarter, but it depends on time, and I've still got 2 more to do, so there we go. So Macarius Siding says, well said Kathy, right on the mark. Tamsin says enjoyment is the main thing. When the fun stops, stop or take a break. And stating the obvious, I enjoy coffee and biscuits on the sofa. Achievement unlocked. And on that, I'm going to say good night, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. If you're watching it later, thank you. And thank you, everybody. And thank you to my moderators for moderating. See you next time.